everybody!
Welcome back to the Growing Minds Garden.
So everything is growing like crazy because in the days leading up to the summer solstice, which is in the end of June, every day is getting a little bit longer. There's a little more light every day. And the plants need photosynthesis to grow. So they are responding accordingly.
So we're going to show you what's going on. See you on the farm.
Onions! They love the sun. They're getting bigger every day with those long days. And fennel, which is in the same family as carrots, onions and carrots get along, so we figure fennel and onions get along too. They're all getting bigger. They haven't started bulbing yet, so they're still just long, thin leaves. But as the summer gets on, they'll get bigger and bigger and bigger, storing all those sugars really for the plant to survive the winter, but we are going to eat them before they can make it till next year, most likely.
Fava beans. We had been harvesting the shoots, but some flowers made it through our harvests and got pollinated and became beans. So here are the bean pods. So we'll harvest some and eat them, and we'll also wait till the end of the season and harvest some and save them as seeds for next year.
So a couple weeks ago, we slowly brought the heat-loving plants that had been growing in our greenhouse, like eggplant and tomatoes, and then also things in the melon, squash, cucumber family. They had been living in the greenhouse. That's where we started them, where it was warm. And then we moved them outside gradually. So now it's been a few weeks and they've gotten used to living out in the outdoors, and it's time to get them in the ground.
Alright, so we're here in the greenhouse. We were going to plant melons, but we looked at the spacing requirements and they want 6 to 12 feet apart. So we figured they'd have a lot more room out on the farm. So in here we put basil, I believe Genovese or an Italian basil. Here and down at the end a purple basil, rosy basil. So they'll have lots of room in here. And basil likes to be picked to grow. So once it grows a little bit, we'll harvest some of those lower leaves, and then it'll get nice and full. And over here we have cucumbers, crookneck summer squash, and some delicata squash. And this is kind of a trellis because all of these, especially the cucumbers, really like to climb. They have little tendrils that they'll wrap around and climb up, so we'll see how big they get climbing up this trellis.
Alright, sheet mulch is something that covers the ground to keep weeds from growing. And in this case it's plastic. You could use cardboard, something that will decompose. And we leave it on until we're ready to use the beds. Maybe a couple months. Underneath the sheet mulch, weeds are not growing, so that's kind of the main thing. Also, whatever was growing there before is dying and decomposing and adding organic matter to our soil. So our clay soil will be loamier, it'll have more organic matter in it, when we're done sheet mulching than before. So it's kind of a twofer. The white stuff you see is lime. Remember, lime, ground up limestone sweetens the soil, so we're decreasing the acidity, and it's been working its way. It takes a while to get going, so we, have it sitting there for a couple months, just makes it all the more effective. So now that the weeds are mostly dead and have been decomposing, we'll dig up these rows and get our corn, bean, and squash field going in time for the summer plants. the Broad Fork. So, the Broad Fork is a really big forky thing. Looks like this. And it's really good for digging deep down into the soil. And ideally, if our soil wasn't so clayey, it would aerate, meaning it would add air to the soil without fully turning it over. So all the different soil microbes and worms and bugs and all that stuff like to live at certain depths. So if we're constantly turning over the soil, it's constantly disturbing their environment, their ecosystem, and making it harder for them to live. And we want healthy soil we want our soil to have lots of living organisms in it. So in nice loose soil, the Broad Fork is intended to aerate, to add air, because our roots, even though they're underground, roots of our plants need air, without fully turning the soil over. We end up turning the soil over anyway, sometimes with the rototiller, but this is just a good way to get really deep down and loosen up the soil way, like 6 to 12 inches down, so the roots of our plants can really thrive underground. And here's a little worm friend. Woo!
Here are the sunchokes that you planted. They're up past my waist now. And we have a volunteer, something that looks like a squash or a pumpkin maybe, so we'll have to see what that grows into. And I wanted to take you around to the volunteer sunchokes, because those have also gotten really tall. Another bed of sunchokes that all of you planted. And these were planted last year, and we dug them up, but they still came back, so we'll have lots of sunchokes. This bed is almost as tall as I am now, so they are going to be way high in the fall. So sunchokes, if you'll remember, we planted the tubers underground, so this part will all cut down and we'll dig up the tubers underground. We have some lettuce here that we've planted that's growing into big full heads of lettuce. And very exciting, our strawberries are starting to ripen. So we have lots of green strawberries here, and some are getting nice and red with this warm sun that we've had. This chard was overwintered and is now bolting. So it has these flowers growing out of the top, and it's not very good to eat anymore. So we're going to pull it up to make room for some more plants in this bed. So this is the end of the fava bean bed, and we have a few chard plants here. And what we're gonna do with the plants, after I have a shovel in here and pulling that out, is put them down at the end of this eastern field, and we'll cover it with sheet mulch, and then that'll break down, and all the nutrients that were in the chard plant, along with some thistles that I pulled, will break down and go into the soil to add nutrients there. So here's the chard plant I just dug up. Get it in the wheelbarrow. That's how big one plant is. So I'm gonna wheel it down to the bed down there and dump it on the weeds, and then I'll come pull up the rest of these. So here's the last bed on the southeast field. And thistles I pulled from all around the garden and the farm. Just laying that chard on top. So everything can break down and put nutrients back in the soil so we can use this bed for planting. It'll have that sheet mulch just like that over there down on top of this bed to break it down. Because we don't want the thistles to grow back. We want them to die before we plant in here. So here's how the farm's doing. Here's our brassica field. We have a couple more fields we can plant in here. And our giant potatoes. Some at the very end have started flowering. These are the macaw ozettes. They're not as big as the other ones, but we have hilled them up. And these are the potato blossoms. So they're probably done producing potatoes now, though we might try pinching off these flowers and see if that would let them continue to grow for a while. So we'll see.
Thanks for coming along with us today.
This is our last update of the school year, but if you subscribe to this channel, you'll be able to see what we're up to all summer.
See you next time.